In less than 24 hours, the illusion that took 30 years to build was completely dismantled. What Camilla realized behind closed doors on a quiet Tuesday afternoon was not just that her secret operation had failed, it was the terrifying physical realization that she actually owns absolutely nothing. It happened in the most humiliating way possible for a woman who believed she had conquered the British Monarchy. A simple, sterile administrative memo delivered not by a senior royal but by a mid-level clerk, stating that her private office's access to the Crown Estate processing channels had been permanently revoked. No shouting, no public scandal, just a heavy wooden door quietly locking in her face. This is the story of the most staggering administrative power grab the modern monarchy has ever witnessed, and the silent, ruthless execution of institutional revenge that stopped it in this video. We are going to unpack the secret territorial and financial land grab Camilla attempted while King Charles was fighting for his life. We will reveal exactly how Princess Anne and Prince William uncovered the buried paper trail, the precise bureaucratic weapon they used to destroy it, and the devastating moment Camilla finally understood that the absolute power she thought she wielded was entirely a mirage. To truly understand the gravity of the trap that just snapped shut, you have to look at the empire Camilla believed she had secured. For 3 decades, she played the longest, most disciplined game of psychological manipulation the institution had ever seen. She endured the public backlash. She systematically worked to erase the legacy of Diana, Princess of Wales, replacing it inch by inch with her own carefully curated narrative of quiet loyalty. And for a long time, it looked as though she had won when she stood on the balcony of Buckingham Palace at the coronation, looking out at the crowds with her own grandchildren positioned right beside the heirs to the throne. It was the ultimate display of conquered territory. She had taken the ultimate prize. She believed she had Charles completely controlled, and by extension, she believed she controlled the crown. But behind the polite smiles and the designer coats, Camilla harbored a deep, unacknowledged commercial desperation. She is a queen consort, but she has no royal blood. She does not own the palaces. She does not own the duchies. She does not control the sovereign grant. Everything she enjoys is a borrowed reality contingent entirely on her husband's heartbeat. And when King Charles's cancer diagnosis sent shockwaves through the palace, that borrowed reality began to fracture. The institution immediately shifted into a quiet, heavily guarded contingency mode. While the public sent well wishes, the senior working royals were bracing for the future. And in that atmosphere of profound vulnerability, Camilla saw a closing window. She decided it was time to make her bloodline untouchable. She did not ask for permission. She knew that any direct request to elevate the Parker Bowles family would be instantly killed by William. Instead, she weaponized the mundane. Camilla's private office began moving a series of deeply buried administrative requests through the lower tiers of the palace bureaucracy. This was not just about honorary titles anymore. This was about permanent state-funded security and real estate. She was attempting to secure a 99-year lease on a highly guarded Crown Estate property for her son Tom. But she was not doing it through standard residential channels. Her office was attempting to reclassify the property under a newly invented operational category, masking it as a household-adjacent security asset. If the paperwork slipped through, her son would be granted a permanent royal residence fully protected by the state, shielded from public scrutiny and virtually impossible for William to evict once he took the throne. The brilliance of the plan was in its staggering dullness. The documents were formatted to look like routine estate maintenance renewals. They were slipped into stacks of hundreds of other perfectly ordinary papers, designed to be stamped by exhausted clerks who were too overwhelmed by the ongoing medical crisis to read the fine print. Camilla's team was banking on the chaos. They were relying on the fact that King Charles, weakened by his treatments, was signing off on daily administrative boxes without the stamina to question the micro details. It was a forensic surgical attempt at institutional theft, exploiting a vulnerable monarch to secure real estate and lifelong protection for a non-royal family. But she forgot about the one person inside that institution who never stops watching. Princess Anne does not panic and she does not get distracted. For years, Anne had viewed Camilla's bureaucratic maneuvers with the cold, objective scrutiny of an intelligence officer. Following the coronation, Anne had quietly mandated a secondary, invisible layer of auditing over anything originating from the Queen Consort's private office. So when a junior clerk in the Crown Estate Management Division noticed a strange coding discrepancy on a property lease and felt too intimidated to raise it with his direct supervisor, fearing Camilla's reach, he bypassed the entire chain of command. He took it straight to the Princess Royal. Anne did not say a word when she read the document. She did not confront the clerk. She simply took the file, thanked him, and went to work. Over the next 48 hours, operating entirely in the shadows, Anne pulled every single piece of correspondence. Every digital footprint and every draft related to the property transfer. She found the exact paper trail linking the reclassification directly to Camilla's most senior staff. She found the fake operational categories. She documented exactly how the paperwork had been deliberately structured to bypass William's financial oversight. Anne built an airtight, irrefutable forensic profile of an active deception happening right under the king's nose. What happened next was a masterclass in the weaponization of administrative protocol. Anne did not take this to Charles first. She knew the king was too fragile and perhaps too easily manipulated by his wife to execute the necessary response. Instead, she took the complete unredacted file directly to Prince William. For the Prince of Wales, this was not merely a breach of protocol, it was a profound moral outrage. He was already carrying an unimaginable burden balancing his duties to the crown with the silent, enduring grief of watching his wife Catherine navigate her own grueling health crisis. Catherine's quiet, uncomplaining sacrifice for the institution stood in devastating contrast to the staggering exploitation sitting on the desk in front of him. William looked at the paperwork and saw the exact same self-serving ambition that had dismantled his mother's life decades ago. Diana had been stripped of her Royal Highness status. Her protections ripped away, while here was the architect of that misery, secretly trying to siphon the crown's most guarded assets for a family that had done nothing to earn them. It was the ultimate insult to his mother's memory and his wife's current suffering. William's sorrow hardened into something absolute and terrifying. He did not scream. He did not call the press. He used the very system Camilla tried to manipulate to completely obliterate her. Acting with his authority as the heir and the controller of the Duchy of Cornwall, William issued a sweeping immediate directive. He froze all pending real estate and security reclassifications across the entire royal portfolio. He did not just stop Camilla's specific document, he structurally locked her out of the system. And then the trap was sprung. Without any warning, Camilla was summoned to a private room where Princess Anne was waiting. There was no polite small talk. Anne simply slid the intercepted documents across the table. Every hidden move exposed. Camilla's composure shattered. The realization hit her like a physical blow. She had been caught completely and undeniably. Her carefully constructed empire of influence was crumbling in real time. Panicked and desperate, she realized there was only one card left to play. She stood up, her hands trembling, and reached for the phone to call Charles, utterly convinced that when it truly mattered, the king would intervene to save her. The phone rang 3 times before the line clicked open. Camilla did not hear her husband's voice. Instead, she heard the measured, painfully polite tone of the king's principal private secretary. The message delivered to her was brief and clinically precise. The king had been fully briefed by the Princess Royal and the Prince of Wales. He considered this an internal matter of estate management. He would not be taking her call and he would not be intervening. The line went dead. Camilla lowered the receiver, turning to look at Princess Anne. Anne had not moved. She simply sat there watching the exact moment the Queen Consort's 30-year illusion of absolute control fractured into dust. For 3 decades, Charles had been her ultimate shield. He had fought his mother, he had fought the Church of England, and he had fought the British public to place the crown on Camilla's head. She had built her entire psychological survival inside that institution on the unshakable belief that when cornered, Charles would always choose her. But faced with William's absolute financial authority and Anne's irrefutable forensic evidence, Charles chose the crown. He looked at the staggering institutional theft his wife had attempted while he was sick. He looked at the fury of his heir, and he chose the survival of his reign over the protection of her ambition. That silence was the most devastating betrayal of Camilla's life. When she walked out of that room, she was not escorted by senior courtiers. She walked down the corridor alone, accompanied only by the crushing weight of her own commercial desperation. To the outside world, Camilla is a queen consort dripping in inherited diamonds, living in castles and flying on state planes. But the brutal institutional reality is that she owns absolutely none of it. The jewels belong to the vault, the palaces belong to the state, the vast billion-dollar machinery of the Duchy of Cornwall, which funds the royal family's private lives, belongs entirely to William. If King Charles passes away, Camilla is legally reduced to a dowager with no constitutional role. No royal bloodline and no independent wealth that even begins to compare to the crown. She will be entirely dependent on William's grace and favour for a roof over her head. This is the hidden truth behind her brazen power grab. the attempt to secure a 99-year lease on a highly guarded Crown estate. Property for her son was never just about elevating the Parker Bowles name. It was a desperate, calculated insurance policy. She was trying to siphon off a state-funded fortress. A property locked under an impenetrable operational lease would have given her a permanent, untouchable sanctuary paid for by the institution, where she could retreat and maintain a shadow court completely immune to William's authority once he became king. William saw the blueprint exactly for what it was, and his response was a masterclass in structural demolition. By the following morning, the scope of William's retaliation became terrifyingly clear to Camilla's staff. When her private secretaries arrived at their offices, they discovered that their digital access matrix had been fundamentally rewritten. For years, the Queen Consort's office had enjoyed unhindered lateral access to duchy and crown estate files, moving seamlessly through the system. That privilege was gone. Their security credentials had been forcefully downgraded to external household status. If Camilla now wanted a budget approved, a staff member hired, or even a routine security protocol adjusted for a personal trip, she could no longer backchannel it. Her team was forced to submit formal, trackable requisitions directly to William's financial officers. She was no longer a co-architect of the monarchy. She was just another petitioner waiting for William's stamp of approval. The visual humiliations followed shortly after, quiet but devastatingly deliberate. Institutional power in the British monarchy is communicated through geography and access. A week after the audit, a new protocol was quietly circulated regarding the administrative entrances at Windsor Castle. Camilla's private staff, who had previously walked through the primary inner courtyard doors alongside the King's senior aides, were instructed to route all their daily movements through the secondary side doors. To the public eye, nothing had changed, but inside the walls, making the Queen Consort's team use the side doors was a flashing neon sign to the entire palace staff. The hierarchy had been violently reset. William was physically pushing her footprint out of the absolute center of power. This silent restructuring carried an even deeper emotional resonance when contrasted with the woman William was fiercely protecting. While Camilla was caught desperately trying to steal property deeds through the back door, Catherine, the Princess of Wales, was navigating a life-threatening illness with unwavering, uncomplaining dignity. Catherine had never once asked for a secret lease. She had never demanded titles for her siblings. Her power inside the institution is absolute because it is entirely legitimate. She is the mother of the future kings. For William, destroying Camilla's shadow operation was not just an administrative necessity, it was an act of profound moral preservation. He was ensuring that the institution his wife was sacrificing her health to serve would not be pillaged by the woman who had once stood over the wreckage of his mother's life. To finalize the establishment of this new order, William executed one last breathtakingly cold maneuver. As King Charles stepped back from certain daily duties to focus on his recovery, William began conducting more of his sovereign estate business from a specific private audience room at Windsor. It was a room Camilla had previously curated, a space she had subtly stripped of the past to reflect her own aesthetic. William did not make a scene, he simply ordered a single addition to the decor. His staff brought a painting out of the Royal Collection archives and hung it directly behind the primary desk. It was a portrait of Diana. There was no press release. There was no announcement. It was just quietly placed there, silently dominating the room. Every time, Camilla's staff had to enter that office to submit their newly mandated requisition forms. They had to stand in front of the Prince of Wales, beneath the watchful eyes of the woman Camilla had spent 30 years trying to erase. The trap is now permanently sealed. Camilla remains Queen Consort in name, wearing the crowns and smiling for the cameras. But behind the heavy wooden doors of the palace, she is living inside a gilded cage of her own making. The back channels are dead. The invisibility she weaponized is gone. She is fully exposed, managing a vastly reduced orbit, monitored entirely by the stepson, who now holds every single key to her future. The illusion of absolute power has evaporated, leaving only the cold, hard reality of an institution that protects its bloodline above all else. If you found this deep dive into the hidden mechanics of royal power insightful, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss our next forensic analysis. The true story is rarely the one printed in the papers. Thank you for watching, and we will see you in the next one.